I will take an intervention from the lady here, and then I'll give you the word, Ms. Bellamy.
Thank you very much, Your Highness. My name is Martina Roth from Intel Corporation, and I'm very happy to be invited to this meeting. First and foremost, I would like to speak for the private sector that there's one item perhaps to be added to the discussion, and this is value. A lot of things have been talked about, finance and investment, but at the end of the day, what the most important is the value that we are bringing. Alone, our company is spending $100 million a year in education, but the value is way bigger just because we are collaborating with different players, starting with governments, but also with NGOs, etc. I would like actually to build on what Dr. Bellamy said before, leading the Global Partnership for Education. Because clearly, in the moment we collaborate, we have a way bigger impact, a way bigger value that we are bringing collectively. And the approach she took when she reorganized the former FGI, but now Global Partnership for Education, was that she was inviting proactively the private sector and the foundation to form one constituency and to be on her governing board. That is, for me, role modeling a new innovative approach. And we, in fact, are talking with foundations how to approach this best. Being in a company that has a foundation and corporate affairs in the company really addressing education, I must say that to me and for many of my colleagues in this constituency, this is the approach to take. Perhaps one aspect that has not been mentioned, but I know all of you on the panel, especially Your Highness and Dr. Bellamy, are very supportive on girls and women, and the importance of focusing on those. Perhaps a couple of words on what you are planning to do here and with the different partners. Thank you.
Because we're focusing today on financing, so I think
I understand.
that's why.
Okay.
Okay, I'll take some more interventions. Do you have a microphone? You don't have one, please. Coming back to you. Thank you. Almost everyone has interventions, so please keep it short. Tfaddal.
Yes. Your Highness, Sheikh Hamouza, pleasure to see you again. My question is, since we're talking about accountability and trust in financing, first of all, my name is Amro Khater. I'm from Business Learning Institute. It's management education company. Why don't we form a committee or a group of people, selective, distinguished people, headed by Qatar Foundation, to examine issues that has to do with accountability and trust. And this could be endorsed by an international body that can have the say if someone, a project or a country that is not doing proper spending, could then a decision could be made that this is not the right project or the right fund, and then we can solve this issue, we can solve this problem. So a committee that examines issues that has to do with accountability and trust, and this could be a force that makes sure that every project is handled in the right way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think when I mentioned KPI, the key performance indicators, trust and accountability should be one of those indicators.
Okay. Okay, I can see a microphone. Okay, go ahead, and then you are next. Please.
Hi. First of all, my name is Lori Henninger. I'm with the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies. I would like to very much thank the panel, and particularly Sheikh Hamouza, for your focus on education in conflict situations, and to Carol for the new mechanisms within the global partnership. I think that it's not an innovative mechanism, but one of the areas that desperately needs attention around financing is in the gap between humanitarian financing during conflict situations and development finance that happens at some time later. Education can't stop during a conflict or a crisis. And one of the things that I would like to charge this community with thinking about is what are the mechanisms that can be developed to bridge that gap between humanitarian and development financing for education.
Thank you so much. Yes, okay.
2 points.
I promise you're next.
I'm sorry, I know. 2 points. One from before. I wasn't suggesting that the so-called innovative financing mechanisms for health didn't work. They did. We should use them. They're just nothing new and fancy. They worked. The point is, so much attention has been put on those that there's been too little attention put on conventional financing and how to more effectively use conventional financing. So what we're doing is the tail is wagging the dog rather than looking at how you take the greater bulk of financing and use it in a more innovative way. Secondly, what we have to do partly in dealing with emergencies is there's this incredible gap between what's considered to be emergency and what's considered to be development. And education has always sat in the development drawer and never in the emergency drawer, even though health sits in both. But there is nothing more important for a child than some normalcy in an otherwise abnormal situation, which means that education has to continue even in the midst of crisis. And to me, ultimately, we haven't gotten there yet, but what covers that gap is that you never make that distinction between humanitarian and development. You understand that education as a development investment has to go on in the emergency. Because if it isn't, who ultimately, when peace comes or something that looks like peace, who will be the future leaders? Where are those young people in the future who will lead that country if they haven't had an education? So we have got to change the mindset of funders to understand that education in emergencies is development. It's not just an emergency response.
Thank you. Please.
Merci. Merci, Votre Majesté, Son Altesse. Je interviens au nom du ministre gabonais
I'm intervening on behalf
de
of
l'Éducation
the
nationale,
Gabon,
de l'enseignement supérieur, de la
Minister
recherche
of,
scientifique, de
Education,
l'innovation
Higher Education,
et de la culture.
Scientific
Du Gabon,
research,
Son Excellence, Monsieur
and
Séraphin
scientific research.
Mundunga.
Mr.
Très
Séraphin
rapidement,
Mundunga.
Une question ou
Is it a
Une
question?
petite intervention pour
D'accord.
dire ce qui se passe
short
au
intervention,
Gabon
saying
en termes
what is
d'innovation
happening in Gabon
du
in
système
terms of
éducatif.
innovation
Cette
of
innovation,
the
ces
educational
réformes
system.
portent un nom,
This
les États
innovation,
généraux
this reform
de
has
l'éducation,
titled
de la
the
formation et
headquarters,
de l'adéquation
gender
formation-emploi,
situation of,
organisé par le président de la République Ali Bongo Ondimba du 17 au 18 mai 2010. Ces États généraux, cette innovation porte deux principes. Le premier principe, c'est effectivement la modernisation et la démocratisation du système éducatif gabonais. Deuxième principe, c'est la vocation scientifique, technologique et professionnalisante du système éducatif gabonais. Au niveau des valeurs, il y a quelques valeurs, notamment les valeurs de citoyenneté, des valeurs de l'environnement, l'intérêt de l'environnement, de solidarité et de mérite. Quelques actions innovantes apportées par le chef de l'État. On peut parler par exemple de l'introduction, de la généralisation du système préprimaire. On peut parler de l'introduction dans le système éducatif des nouvelles technologies de l'information, de la communication. Pour beaucoup. Donc, et je termine par rapport au financement dont on parle ici. Et je voudrais féliciter le gouvernement qatari d'avoir passé un projet d'accord à Libreville pour un financement de tout ce système éducatif dont le coût est de près de 4 milliards de dollars. Et je termine tout simplement pour vous informer que vous avez à la sortie les exemplaires des États généraux du rapport général.
Ça, c'était une publicité jusqu'à maintenant.
Ah, d'accord.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Merci de votre
facilitator is intervening. This was a publicity, not an intervention.
My name is Michael Barber. I'm Chief Education Advisor of Pearson and also DFID Special Representative on Education in Pakistan. I just want to pick up Her Highness's point about education in conflict zones and say two things. One is in Pearson we're hoping to set up a fund shortly that will invest, I use the word advisedly given that we're talking about financing models, in private and not-for-profit and public-private partnerships that are providing innovative solutions to education for the poorest families in the world. And secondly, to relate that specifically to the conflict zone, in a conflict zone, by definition, the government is unable, the traditional sort of aid relationship, the traditional government provision is not going to function. And so I think what is needed here is some challenge funding where combinations of people around the world can maybe enter a competition to get funding to solve some of these education problems in the immediate emergencies of conflict, but also in the the long periods where a conflict might be swirling around, but without proper provision, children are not being educated. And I think a sort of global challenge fund along those lines would be a good step forward.
Well, the government usually is part of the conflict.
Yeah, so exactly. So the bidders would not be the bidders would not be the governments. Okay. The bidders would be a range of other providers.
We'll take answers or more interventions. What do you prefer? Okay, more interventions. Microphones, please.
I'm Maha Barada from Euronews. When we speak about innovation in education and in financing, maybe we should also think about the political will to do this, specifically now in the Arab Spring countries where there are emerging democracies. Do you think that now is the time to invest in the innovation of education and the financing in these particular countries?
Okay.
Yes, question? For Your Highness, sorry.
I think it is the right time. I think the society is starting from fresh. They are discarding all the the past with its flaws. New governments, new leaders, comprises many from youth, are ready to accept and to adapt new ways of education. And they've been, I think, the best evidence of what could good quality education bring. We have seen that those people, I mean, the old revolutions and all demonstrations in the Arab world were led by educated people, not just any educated people, but highly educated people, and who got quality education in private schools and highly prestigious universities. So I believe that it's time now. We cannot afford going back to the long traditional way of learning and educating. We have to really to make sure that what we are applying in terms of methodologies and pedagogies are meeting the needs and the requirements of the young minds that, as you said, now they are using those social media's way. They will not accept any kind of traditional ways of learning anymore.
Thank you, Your Highness. Please.
Your Highness, my name is Mehul Sangrajka from Learning Possibilities in the UK. Can I also congratulate you and thank you for your vision and leadership in the field of education? In a lot of the projects that I've been involved in, the financing that goes into developing countries is around building infrastructure or providing technology. And these are long-term complex procurements which rarely seem to produce the results we all hope they would. And perhaps what we should do in terms of financing mechanisms is to think about building capacity not in the recipient countries, but perhaps in the donor countries. Yesterday, for example, we heard about the plight of so many people in the region, young people who are educated, IT literate, motivated, but have to wait 2 to 3 years to get a job. And if there was a way to mobilize them, to give them a year's experience in teaching in these developing countries, it would greatly benefit them and bring capacity into those countries immediately. And young people we know today don't need training on IT, they don't need to know about new methods of learning, they do all of these things. So we will bring a new type of education with a formula like this.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, the microphone.
Thank you. I'm Mohammed Al-Amin At-Tom, Garden City College for Science and Technology, Khartoum, Sudan. I would like to use my few minutes to make a special appeal.
There are two, not few. 2 minutes.
2 minutes, yes. To make a passionate appeal on behalf of a nation that has just emerged from a 40-year-long war. It's the longest war that's known in the history of, in our history, recent history. It's South Sudan. And I know many of the participants here, especially Her Highness, Ms. Bellamy, Professor Sachs, they know the details of the enormous challenges that this nascent nation, is the 193rd nation, that faces in the area of education. In fact, according to the Global Monitoring Report, South Sudan, with a population of 8 million, I might remind you, has the worst indicators for education in the world. For instance, 1.3 million children are out of school. Less than 1% of girls are complete primary school. The last grade of secondary school has only 400 girls. Ratio of pupils to qualified teachers, 100 to 1, and in some states it's 200 to 1. And one can go on and on with these very dire statistics.
Do you have any question?
My question is, well, I started by saying to make an appeal. Yeah. Not a question, but people should just try to reflect for a while on the magnitude of these challenges. But if I might make one recommendation twice, perhaps to think, perhaps in the spirit of the Haiti Task Force, about assisting South Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you so much.